Intro time? This is no time to argue about time. We don't have the time. Bum, 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 ba-da-dum. Time for Orville Season 3 reviews. Welcome to the world of the Orville. That's right, guys. If anyone can name where I appropriated and slightly edited that phrase from, I will give 10 points to Hufflepuff right now. The Orville New Horizons, aka Season 3, somehow all the way up to Episode 6. If you're out there watching this review, you have not watched the Orville yet. A, what's wrong with you? Go find it, go give it a watch. B, please do so now while your numbers, your views can still count and still get that renewal moving. Because if you wait too long, you sleep on this show, it very well may be canceled before you have a chance to even get into it. Anyways, I digress. We're gonna break right into this episode. If you don't like spoilers, bow out and come back after you've seen it. If you don't care, then strap in. We're about to get into this Gordon-heavy episode, the Orville, Season 3, aka New Horizons, Episode 6. That's a mouthful. This one's entitled Twice in a Lifetime. Kicking things off, we are at a party, some sort of a gathering on the Orville here. Gordon playing a beautiful tune, rocking out his guitar, rocking out his singing voice, singing a song that you may recall if you've seen previous episodes of the Orville. If you haven't, you may want to go back and pick up on them because there is a complete and direct reference to something that's happened in the past. I mean, most of this episode actually ties into that. You may want to view that first. Then we've got Isaac here. He's still trying to figure out how to talk to Charlie Burke specifically because she still has a big problem with him, but he's also still not up on the social cues as you might expect. He's still having trouble relating to starting conversations with organics, humans, whatever you want to call them. So he tries to talk to John. John's basically like, well, you're just going to have to try like the rest of us, buddy. I don't know what else to tell you. And then Charlie, who was not present when the episode this is tying into occurred, asks Gordon what this little black rectangle on his desk is. He goes into the backstory. This is a replica cell phone from 2015, rather. The original episode, this was part of an archaeological dig. They looked at it. He created a hologram of this character, Laura, here, and he had the computer synthesize him a replica of the cell phone in order to keep, for what he says, memento reasons or something along those lines, looking through the picture, telling Charlie all about this. Kind of a surrogate for the audience so that anyone who was not up on that episode kind of knows what's going on. You still want to go back and watch that episode, if for nothing else than for the wonderful duet between Gordon and Laura, because that was just wonderful. So now the main crux of our storyline is happening down in engineering. John, with a little help from Isaac, has been tinkering around with the time travel device known as the Aronov device, I believe, and they think they have made a pretty big breakthrough. That's right, instead of just being able to increase the flow of time in a very, very small radius, they're actually now able to conceivably envelop an entire ship-sized area and propel that ship through time. And what they're finding, though, is that time travel isn't necessarily just a mechanic of technology. There is another component, but I'll get to that in a bit later. Right now, they're going to show us a test. So, Gordon has this egg salad sandwich. What they're going to do is they're going to send this egg salad sandwich 10 seconds into the past. It materializes here while John is still holding it. The crux of the problem now becomes, if he does not send that back 10 seconds into the past from our future from this point, that means he creates a paradox. So once the sandwich materialized, he has no choice but to follow through on that directive and actually send it 10 seconds into the past. Otherwise, you might create some sort of fractured timeline. You know, whatever. They're not really clear on the rules, but it ain't going to be good. It's not going to be good if that happens. So, lo and behold, he does that. And they contact the Union headquarters. Admiral Perry, I think Admiral Perry, the Ted Danson admiral, tells them that this is a very significant discovery that if anyone were to weaponize time travel, that's just a big cluster F for the entire galaxy, probably the entire universe, the multiverse, whatever, the omniverse for all I know. So it's not going to be good. He wants them to transport this device to a very, very secure holding site somewhere in Union space so that it can be researched and guarded. sends a fleet of ships to escort them in this mission. Lo and behold, when they arrive, it's blown to hell. That's right, completely destroyed. They don't know why. They don't know how. Very, very quickly, they realize someone else is there. Dun, 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 dun. In blow a bunch of Kaelon spheres. That ain't good. If these Kaelon get time travel technology, basically, they can end the Union before it even starts, and we don't even have a chance. That's not good. They need to get the hell out of there. It's not looking good. They decide that their last-ditch effort is to send somebody down to engineering to destroy the Aronov device, because if it falls into enemy hands, everything's over anyways. So that is their last-ditch effort. Gordon decides to go down. He gets to engineering. There's this pitched battle going on outside. They're getting rocked with explosions. Ships are blowing up left and right. And he gets down there, and right as he's shooting this time travel device, the quantum core overloads, and the interactions of the energy kind of gives him this sort of temporal blast wave. It's a very cool shot, actually. You see various timelines of Gordon being shattered throughout the time-space continuum. That's how I took it. It's very reminiscent of, the Mannheim experiment or Mannheim steamroller experiment, something along those lines from TNG. I think it's the first season where you've got various versions of Data as he gets closer to the experiment. Kind of reminded me of something like that. After we finish that, the crew manages to escape, but lo and behold, Gordon is no longer on board. They can no longer find Gordon, no sign of his life signs, no sign of, any residual debris, like he wasn't vaporized or he wasn't killed. He's just no longer on board. And it doesn't take them long to suddenly receive a hail. That's right, our boy Gordon is hailing them from 400 some odd years in the past from Earth. Basically, he was blasted into the past. They look into the Union database here and find out that he arrived around 2015, lived his entire life on Earth under an assumed, not really an assumed identity, but assumed credentials. He became a very, very established engineer, I guess, on aircraft and ended up becoming a pilot. Then he ran a charter airline service. He lived to 2068, somewhere in there. A nice long life. Had a wife, had some children. So he did not follow the temporal prime directive or whatever they call it in this universe. He interacted with the society after he was lost in time, which is a big no-no, as we learn. I'm not sure that was really established in the show before, but that is a big no-no. Their Union Temporal Prime Directive is a big thing. Our new goal is to try and go back in time and rescue him. Can they do it? Are they going to be able to do that? Well, I guess now is a good time to discuss how time travel works in this universe, at least according to John and Isaac. Just wanted to show this here because I love my boy Yaphet, and rest in peace, Norm. Here's how time travel is working, at least according to their theory. There is a technological component, which obviously is this Aronov device. However, the destination is controlled by imagination, mental capacity. There's some sort of time-space shenanigans going on that link technology and link the mind. So this is very reminiscent to me of the way the Traveler works in TNG. Technology, science, and the metaphysical aspects of the mind and imagination are overlapping, and that's how time travel works, which basically means Gordon traveled back to 2015 and to Earth, so he traveled time and space. This isn't simple time travel, or he would have ended up 400 years in the past in the relative vicinity of the Orville. Now, obviously, the universe is constantly in motion, so theoretically, if he were to just remain stationary 400 years in the past, the universe would have moved considerably from that point, but that's a whole thing that's never really touched on in sci-fi time travel, so I'm going to skip it right now anyways. That's why he was sent back to the past, because he had been thinking about the cell phone situation from earlier that was on his mind, so he was transported back to the time that he was thinking about, whether or not it was subconsciously or not. That's how they decide. That's the probability of what happened. We saw that earlier in this series when Kelly traveled in time. That's not really relevant to this storyline, though. That's just for a context. They are able to power up the whole ship Aronov device in order to travel back in time. This cool shot of the ship kind of doing a time warp again for the first time. And they travel back in time with the caveat, Their disonium, which is their equivalent to dilithium in this universe, it runs out about 10 years too early. And by too early, I mean since they're traveling from the future, they are 10 years late. So Gordon has, in essence, been in this universe, this past, I guess, for 10 years. So he arrived in 2015. They arrive in 2025. That's not their best case scenario, but I guess it's better than nothing. And they decide they're going to go down to the planet. Two means to get home. They need to rescue Gordon, and they need more disonium in order to power the ship to get back home. Luckily, there was deposits of this element discovered on Earth, which we were currently unaware of at the time. The downside is you have to drill into the mantle or the core, I can't remember which, in order to get this out. So the best person to do this, they decide, is Isaac. Obviously, you can't have a big old robot just bounding around through the 2025s. Although, it's 2025, potentially someone could look like a robot and walk around society and no one would really care, especially if there's like a Comic-Con. But I digress. He uses a holographic generator that we've seen a couple times before. We saw Yaphet use it a couple of seasons ago, and we also saw the first season when Ed and Gordon broke into the Krill ship to go undercover. They posed as Krill using this. It ended up malfunctioning, so Ed is a little apprehensive here, but in order to get Isaac on this mission, they're going to have to use it. So this was cool. We got to see Isaac and or his real life persona, Mark Jackson, play without the suit. And it's very fun to see him act as Isaac with a real human body instead of having to act under the prosthesis, or, well, not really prosthesis, the costume, I suppose, because it's very interesting to see how his face looks when he's doing all these Isaac movements. And that's something we haven't really gotten to see before. They land on the Earth in 2025, cloak their shuttle. They're going to go in two parties. They're going to have Kelly and Ed here go after Gordon, and they're going to have Mark Jackson, aka human form Isaac, go with Charlie Burke to locate and drill up this disonium to get the hell out of Dodge. Obviously, that's going to be an interesting pair because Charlie not a big fan of Isaac. Not at all. So we discover here Gordon has just landed his charter airplane. He's doing some, typical work, and suddenly he's got a couple of visitors. Who should they be? Well, we as the audience obviously know they're his old pals. From his point of view, he has not seen these people in 10 years. He has basically gone native in 21st century Earth. He has not had any contact with these people in 10 years. For all he knows, he sent that rescue message to the Orville. He's never heard anything. He probably assumed they were dead. So he had no choice but to figure out how he was going to survive. Cute scene here where he's got a car. He wanted the vanity plate to say Orville. Somebody else already had it, so he had to settle for Orville. That was cute. I did like that. And now we find he's got a home. He's got a child. He's got a wife. He went and found Laura. Had one child with her, another on the way. According to Kelly and Ed, this breaks all sorts of not just personal boundaries, because kind of a little stalkerish, but it also breaks about, 50 or 60 temporal prime directive articles. Let's call them articles. Then we get our second couple here, Mark Jackson, Isaac, and Charlie Burke here. They enter an establishment because they need to go travel a significant distance, and they can't do that on foot. They enter a biker bar, and they decide the way to get some transportation is to challenge these fellas, these big, burly Hells Angels type people, to a test of strength. That's right. They're going to do an arm wrestling match. And of course, our people think that this is just a geeky, wimpy, turtleneck type of guy. Ha ha, there's no way he's going to beat them. Little do they know that he is an advanced cybernetic life form from the future. So they have their little arm wrestling fight. It's a cute scene of him trying to act like he's going to lose, not really understanding social conventions, and then, lo and behold, he wins, shocking everyone, and they're able to obtain motorcycles and head out on the highway to reach their destination. Then we cut back to a cute scene that's had a little play in the previous episodes, but this is John and Tala finally getting their freak on. I kind of like this couple. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. We really don't have any substantial couples on the show aside from the Claire and Isaac thing, which is currently kind of will they or won't they, and Ed and Kelly, which seem to have settled into a friendship that doesn't necessarily need a relationship. So aside from those, we don't really have any hardcore couples going on or relationships on the ship. So I like these two together. Oh, I forgot Clyden and Bortus. Obviously, they were married, but after Tale of Two Topas, probably not anymore. I like this. They didn't really go too far with it. I don't know if this is just going to be a fling. They're going to get together, but I like them together. I would like to see what develops from this. That being said, now back to the ground floor where Gordon and Ed and Kelly have this. It's a very long scene. It's a great conversation. It's a great argument, a great fight. Gordon lays it all out on the line. They're basically telling him this is insane. You can't do this. You're breaking the Prime Directive. We're going to take you out of here one way or another. He's like, hell no. You abandoned me. I've been here for 10 years. I had to make my way in the world. Time directives and all that stuff be damned. I had to live my life. What did you expect me to do? Just die? And this is where I feel like Ed maybe pushes it a little too far. He's like, yes, for the sake of the timeline, yes, you should have died. And it's like, whoa. So this coupled with last episode, I think we're seeing the extremes of Union officers and Union mentality being pushed beyond the bounds of reason, where it's kind of pushing the gray area of, is the Union always in the right? And I do kind of like that. I do like that they're not always being shown as the perfect, moral, upstanding people they think they are. They're a little ragged around the edges. So that is fun, even if that's not the implied message. I also want to point out this picture in the background. I'm assuming they're pictures his child drew of spaceships. One of them has like a UFO and a cat. I took that personally to be a reference to the bridge cat that was asked for earlier in the season 1, I believe. I don't know if it was. Even if it wasn't, these are some cool drawings. Moving right along, now Gordon decides to tell Laura everything. She technically didn't know that he was from the future and all this, but based on the way he's acted, she's always felt like there was something different about him. He's always giving her comfort about things that should freak anyone out. Like, she references the pandemic. He's like, well, whatever, it's no big deal. We'll get through this. Things are going to get better, yada, yada, yada. She knew somewhere deep down there was something going on with him, but she didn't really know, but now he lays it all out to her. I like the fact that she didn't run screaming from the room or anything like that. She basically accepted it. Back to the Charlie and Isaac subplot. Gonna blast through this a little bit. They find out the access point to the Dysonium they need is underneath this house, so they're going to have to drill under it. It turns out it's an open house. I guess lucky for them that it wasn't an occupied home. So they pretend to be a couple to go inside a newlywed couple looking for their first home. Hijinks ensue a little bit. They go down to the basement. They drill into the Earth's core. They look for the stuff they're going to need. And they have this scene where now Isaac is finally having the chance to converse with Charlie in person because she's always avoided it. He wants to thank her for saving his life early on in the season. She basically doesn't want to accept the thank you, doesn't say you're welcome. They have a nice little exchange. She tells us now that the woman that we saw in episode 1 that was killed during her escape was more than just her best friend. It was somebody that she was thinking about asking to be her girlfriend. Never got that chance because the Kalon killed her, and she obviously blames Isaac for this. So that is the seat of her resentment. I think they have a little bit of a bridge being built here. I don't think things are as good between them as they can be. Let's go with that. Now we've got the trio here of Ed and Kelly and Tala, because obviously I think they wanted a little muscle, and they're coming to take Gordon by force. He tells them, hell no, I'm not leaving my family. My family is stronger than time. You guys get the hell out of here. You're no longer my family. You abandoned me. Leave my house right now. I'll do something. They're like, no, we're going to take you by force. He's like, the hell you are. He pulls out his gun. They're like, you know what? Screw you, Gordon. We're not going to do anything. We're going to go back 10 years into the past and take you from when you first arrived so that none of this happened. Peace out, Girl Scout. Bye-bye. And then they leave. He has the chance to shoot them as they walk away. He chooses not to. A lot of the fandom is up in arms about this, feeling like he did not do enough to protect his family. I I'll get to that a little later because time travel rules don't necessarily negate the fact that he still exists. They repower the core, travel back 10 years in time. It works. Pick up Gordon 1 month. This is important. 1 month after his arrival. This becomes some sort of paradox now because the original Gordon never sent the message until he was on Earth for either 3 or 6 months. This means they picked up this Gordon prior to him sending the original message, which led the Orville to come back to find him in the first place. Therefore, the entire egg salad sandwich from the beginning of the episode paradox cannot be fulfilled because the message was never sent in the first place, ultimately meaning, depending on how time travel works in this universe, they probably just created at least a couple of split time streams, and our 10-year in the future 2025 Gordon and family probably still alive, probably still exist, probably were not wiped out and erased by these events, even though that's probably what our crew thought would happen. I choose to believe they're still out there, and possibly next season we'll see some sort of a multiverse of Malloy situation, or, maybe we'll never see them again. They'll just be shown in reference. Maybe they'll come back in relation to a Priya episode. I don't know, but I don't think they're gone. I think that Gordon timeline is still preserved somewhere, and maybe we'll have a visit to the Orville's equivalent of a mirror universe, although I hope to God it doesn't go to hell, because I want that Gordon and Laura to be happy. We find out that this fried the Aronov device. It's going to take them a minimum of 6 months to fix it, meaning they're trapped in 2015. Ed's like, well, spend the 6 months you need to fix it. John comes up with an alternate solution where they can try to travel to the future in the conventional old school way by turning off the equivalent of their warp bubble. They could travel at near light speed and, in essence, do the time dilation thing where they travel away from Earth a certain distance and then travel back to Earth a certain distance. During that time, they will have the Earth equivalent time will have moved 400 years, but they will have only experienced, I don't know what they said, like a couple of hours, something like that. So they're trying to do the old school time dilation thing. I know that was a cool way to try and fix it all at the end, but at the same time, I also think it wouldn't really have made much of a difference had they stayed there for 6 months repairing the device. I understand that had that time dilation thing failed, they could still repair the device and travel back anyways, so I guess it was worth a try. So here they are doing their time travel. Zoop, zoop, zoop. They make it back. 1 month in the past, Gordon reconnecting with Kelly and Ed. He doesn't fault them at all. He obviously did not have the life of the other Gordon, so he really thinks that they did the right thing. He's like, I would not have wanted to be trapped on that primitive Earth for 10 years, so I think what you did is the right thing. I don't know this family. I really have no feelings towards them. I have feelings towards you guys. You're my best friends, so thank you for coming to rescue me. And I think this is probably going to come up later, whether or not we get another season of the show. Fingers crossed, I hope we get some more. I think this is going to come back in a major way somewhere down the line. So I hope we get that 4th season to see it, or if not, maybe in some of the comics or the novels. I do love a good time travel tale, and interestingly enough, Strange New Worlds did a time travel tale this week as well, so it's been a good week if that's your bag. Overall, I liked the episode. Like I said, a couple of the characters acted way over the top, in my opinion, as far as their hard stance on the temporal prime directive. But I'm willing to give them a small benefit of the doubt because from their perspective, when they traveled back in time to save Gordon, I don't know if they're viewing any of this as real. Because as Isaac and John explained, while we are still observing this changed time, there are several possible timelines coexisting in superposition with one another, and until we make a definitive decision one way or another, the timeline cannot set, it cannot solidify. Therefore, I think from their perspective, this whole perverse family that Gordon created isn't necessarily real until the timeline solidifies. Nothing they're really doing matters, because when they're done doing it, what they did those choices to will not exist. And I think coming from that perspective in their minds doesn't make what they do as harsh as it seems from Gordon and our perspective, I can understand if you're on the side of Gordon of like, how could they just destroy his family? And how could Gordon not shoot them to defend his family? I can see both sides, but I think with the wonkiness of the time travel here, both sides did have a right to their side. And I think in the end, both sides did end up surviving. Now, whether or not our 10-year out of time Gordon, our 2025 Gordon, ends up becoming bitter because they threatened him, and when we see him again, he's a vengeful Gordon, I don't know. But it was a very, very, if I can say so, clever episode, even though the rules of time travel are never all that clear. I think it was a clever use of it, whether or not you agree with the decisions made or not. So I would recommend this episode, not my favorite of the season. Always great to hear Gordon singing, and it was great to have Yaphet, even though he was just basically a cameo in this episode. Overall, I am very much enjoying this season of The Orville, and I don't think any of the episodes have, as far as I'm concerned, sucked yet. Some of them are better than others. This is probably third or fourth, maybe my third or fourth favorite of the season. I think Shadow Realms is my least favorite, even though I think it was actually a really good episode. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you thought about this episode, or just leave anything you want to talk about, especially Orville related, because we're getting close to the end of the season and we have not gotten that renewal yet. So Hulu, if you're watching, and I know you are because I've got 103 subscribers now, so I'm big time. You know, I know you're watching. So subscribe, Hulu, renew the damn show, and renew it for 2 more years at least. Renew it for 2 more seasons, or if not, at least renew it for more than 10 episodes so that we have time to at least explore a little more of this universe. But until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.